Okay, all right. So God, I haven't done a webinar for ages. A little bit about me. Well, these are just some of my things that have been happening in my life over the past year. So a lot of things going on. A few holidays there. You'll see a couple of glass drinks seem to feature heavily in my photos there. I do a lot of wine tasting, so it's one of my hobbies. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is obviously a little bit about myself. So this house here, the reason I put this house in here, this is actually the house I grew up in, which is a place called Gravesend in Kent. So right in the very south of the country. And the reason I put it there really just as a highlight in terms of property values. So my father bought this house in 1968 for £3,500, and it was sold for £310,000 last year. So if showing the value of holding on to property over the long term. So this was the ex-council estate. I left when I was 19, so a long time ago. My father died a few years later. But what have I done in my life? So these are some of the companies that either I've set up or worked for. So my very first job was in banking. I left that when I was 26, and I've been self-employed ever since, and that's nearly 40 years ago. So self-employed with Allied Dunbar. Most of you, certainly if you're younger, won't know who that is, but if you'll recognise certainly a name called St James's Place, which is a well-known organisation doing pensions and life insurance. I sold bathrooms for Dolphin. I also sold conservatories. I set up a sales force for the South East Electricity Board. And then you come onto my companies. So these are all companies that I've set up. The Gas Network was a central heating company. Technology speaks for itself. The Number Network was a telephone number company. Utility Network was electricity and gas contracts. And all of those, the Gas Network I sold. Utility Network, I sold that one in 2009. That's the last kind of corporate company, if you like, I had, and got a reasonable figure for that. And then these other four down the bottom, I set up a crowdfunding platform, European crowdfunding platform, around about 6 years ago with a group of guys. The power of networking, that came to me by a joint venture partner who knew somebody who lived in Mallorca who wanted an English property director. And I'd never met this guy in Mallorca before. And now we're good friends, Patrick. He still lives in Mallorca, very nice place out there. So me and him and a few others set up a crowdfunding platform, which is still operational, works out of Rotterdam. And then Property Master Academy, which is my training company, I'll go into in a second. I have a finance brokerage and obviously my own developments. But I was, brought up in a council estate, and I've been self-employed for most of my life. So I firmly believe that you put into life what you put in, what you get out of it. And sorry, the slide's not working. Yeah, let's do that. Apparently, someone decided I was a top 10 coach in the UK. You can see there, I was awarded Training Provider of the Year 2024 through the Blue Bricks magazine. I don't do. I know some of you might think, I've got another training company. I don't do training like what you would have heard some of the others do. I focus mostly on mentoring. So that's my training side. I mentor investors. I get results, simple as that. And I'm a judge at the Property Investor Awards. You might not be familiar with that because it's a long way from you guys, but it's held in London every year. There are a lot of people who do come from the north to come to the Property Investor Awards, and that's the end of this end of November. So that's kind of a brief kind of background about me, and then my two current companies outside of my training one, which is my finance brokerage, and the land and development ones I do. So what I want to look at really was strategies suitable for the current market, because I think this is what Duncan said as well, and I think some of the things I put in here actually quite timely for what he said as well, because I've always believed that if you've got the right product, you can sell in any market, and I think that's what I'm trying to hopefully get across this evening. So what I tend to look for is strategies to add value without major building work, and you'll understand a little bit like that when I get to some of the slides, and some creative thinking so you can solve a problem to uplift the value. I'm not so much into buying BMV, below market value stuff. I don't believe in. personally, and if some of you might disagree with me, but I don't believe in below market value. I think it's a false economy in many instances, and often you'll find surveyors will agree with me. So I don't, the B&B side of things, I think you can get too many people get too caught up on. But what if you're adding value to something, then it doesn't really matter to a degree the price you're actually paying. So to give you an example, so some of you may have heard of short leases. Now, short leases, apply mostly to flats. So you can get houses that are leasehold as well, but it's mostly, we're talking about flats here. And if you don't understand what a short lease is, so basically anything, generally speaking, under about 70 years becomes more difficult to get a mortgage on. Not so much if you're an investor, you can still get mortgages on them, but residential buyers can't, and that's really the main market for these. So there's this process whereby you can extend a lease, and by extending the lease, the statutory length is 90 years, so you can add another 90 years onto whatever the lease is. You add value. Now, that doesn't mean you have to spend an awful lot of money. Of course, it depends on what the current lease is. So, for example, if you've got a leasehold flat which has a current lease left of, let's say, 50 years, then that's going to cost you more than a flat that's got 70 years left on the lease. And there's two ways of extending a lease. You can either do the statutory route, which is by applying to the issuing a Section 42 notice to the current freeholder, which they have to respond to, and you can extend by 90 years. Or you go down an informal route with the freeholder, where you approach them and say, okay, I don't want to do the 90 years. So if you've got like a 70, something that's got 70 years left on, you can actually say, well, actually, I only want 50 years, because that will take it to 120 years anyway, which makes it a very saleable flat at that point. So understanding the short lease process, you can add value in any market. And that's what I'm going to show you this evening, is all the strategies I'm going to talk about, what any market will work. Excuse me, I've got to take water because I'm just getting over a cold. So that's just one example of where you can add value very simply by understanding the process. Next opportunity, same flat. Excuse me. Converting a one-bed flat to a two-bed flat, or a one-bed house to a two-bed house, a two-bed house to a three-bed house. All of those, because of the way that property is valued in the UK, by adding a bedroom always add value. So regardless of what's happening in the market, adding a bedroom will always add value. So in this instance here, I'm going to just show an example here of what the flat looked like. So this is the before, and just to kind of give it some context. Where the living room is currently, that faced onto a wooded area. Where the bedroom is, faces onto some quite nice lawns, outlook, lake, and so on. So this is where a little bit of audience participation. You can either type it in the chat box if it's easier to unmute, I don't mind. But how would you reorganize that to change it into a two-bedroom flat? And I can't see the chat box, so I'll have to leave that to you, Martin.
I'll let you know if anyone jumps in. I'm happy to jump in. You could
go for it.
Do a kitchen kind of living room type scenario, free up the space from the kitchen, perhaps. I don't know.
Possibly.
Or I mean, I don't know what the scale is on that. I'm not very good at reading that, or the bedroom. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just chop the bottom of the bedroom off, presumably put a wall in there. Do you want any other takers?
It's a 72 square meter flat. It's a reasonable size.
If the outlook's currently on the bedroom, would you then move that to be the living room and split the current living room into two to make two bedrooms?
You're kind of along the right kind of path there, Bruce. The first time when I've done this presentation, you're the first person that's come back to that. Yes. So I'll show you what we did. You're quite right. We switched them around. The living room, clearly, what's the point of having a bedroom facing a nice lawn and lake? Totally the wrong way around. So we switched them around, kept the kitchen where it is. The bathroom which again there aren't measurements there, but the bathroom was big enough to convert to a bedroom. And also, you can see there, by changing the living room to the bedroom, we've also got room to put an ensuite bathroom and create an additional bathroom. So now we've got not just a 1 bed, 1 bathroom flat, we've created a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom flat. Now, common sense tells you that's added value regardless. So, that's what I was saying about looking at strategies where you can add value because you will always make money in the market. All right, if you're reliant too much on BMV, there's too many variables involved. So here it's not about someone's opinion. This is about you've added value, you've added a bathroom, you've added a bedroom. So therefore that's increased the value of the flat. And in the same token, in this instance, we've extended the lease. So not only it's a double whammy, you've extended the lease, increased the marketability of the flat by making it a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom, and adding value at the same time. So added quite a lot of value with this one. And this is quite a common strategy, not just in flats, but also houses. If you can change a 2 bedroom house to a 3 bedroom house, certainly some of the older style properties, the 1950s, the older ex-council type properties, they've usually got big, large rooms that you can actually reconfigure around and change into a bigger house. The house I showed you that I used to live in was a 3 bedroom house. It's been changed to a 4 bedroom because the whole front of the house was 1 bedroom when I was a kid. So they changed it to a 4 bedroom house, and that's added value to it. So that's why it's increased, obviously, in value. So another one, which may not be so well known, is title splitting. Now, title splitting is most commonly done with a block of flats. So the scenario here would be there's quite a lot of houses out there where landlords have converted the interior without planning. So they may have changed it into small studios. Studios are not ideal. You ideally want them bigger than that, but the principle's essentially the same. You could have this, if you imagine a house that's been split into 4 flats, but they're still under 1 title. Now, because of that, when you split them, you're creating 5 titles. So if say we've got a house with 4 flats, you're creating 5 titles, 4 for the flats and 1 for the freehold. Now, obviously, there are some changes going on with regards to leaseholds and so on, but the principles are there. And we've very successfully have done this a number of times now, where without necessarily doing any kind of refurbishment or anything of that nature, we've just split the titles. And by splitting the titles, we've created value because we've got that extra title there. But also, we've created a product now that's more marketable. Because if you've got a house that is currently in 4 flats, without the title being split, nobody can buy it apart from another landlord. But when you actually split the title and create titles for those 4 flats, you've now got a marketable product that can go out to the first-time buyer market or buy-to-let market, whichever. And the process is relatively straightforward. Most people don't do it because they don't understand the process, but it's getting a lawyer on board that understands the title splitting and creating of leases. What I can tell you is that when you split a title, you technically can't have the same owner of the leaseholds as the freehold. Okay, so if you're the freehold owner of the block of flats, once you start to create leases, technically speaking, you can't be the owner of those leases as well. So essentially what you do is you have one company that will own the freehold, and then there'll be different people or companies that will own the leases. But this can be a quite profitable strategy, really, again, from not doing a great deal. And this is some of the figures. So this is the figures for this particular one. It's a little bit old now, but you can see that the principles really. Very small amount of refurbishment money compared to the purchase price. So that was the total cost. But by splitting them out, we added value. And you can see there, roughly £120,000 just by creating those separate leases. And that's, once you get your head around the strategy, there's very few people doing this. There's very few people doing the conversion of 1 to 2 beds. There's very few people doing short leases. Right? What I tend to look at are the strategies that most other people aren't doing. So if they were sold, profit, if we sold all that, the profit, £123,000. That whole process of creating those separate leases could be done easily within 6 months. Relatively straightforward. Options. Another way of creating value if you're into land. So Duncan was talking a little bit about land, or I think there's a question about Greenbelt. I'll come on to a little bit of that in a second. So options, if you're not familiar with it, options are a common tool used by developers. I use them all the time. And here, essentially, you're not buying the land, so you have a condition on that option. It'll be, in this instance, the condition is we will buy that subject to planning. You can do an option. You can also do a conditional contract with exchange, but the most common is an option. And of course, with an option agreement, I never pay more than £1, and then I've got some costs to pay. So I have my planning, architect's fees, legal fees. In this instance, about £15,000. Now, this is Southeast London, so it's quite a high value, clearly. But the sale price to the developer was £800,000, so profit of £265,000 in this one. All right, so and what have we done? Well, we've spent a bit of money, so the risk money is £15,000. Right, so we spent money on planning, architects, legal fees. So that's our risk money. But look at the upside. Now, this is not for the faint-hearted. This kind of strategy, if you're looking for land, it's not for the faint-hearted. Because you have got that exposure, the 15,000, which you could lose. Although the way I do it, we have a way of looking at it that we have a 97% success rate. So that's still a little bit of risk there. But this can be done with any bit of land. You just need to understand the planning process. Now, you don't necessarily need an architect, by the way, for planning. A very good planning consultant is a lot cheaper. So you can get planning through a planning consultant, and they'll understand the planning law much better than most architects. I think a lot of people are under the misapprehension that you need to use an architect to do all these things, and you don't. So that's, again, another strategy where you're adding quite a lot of value. It doesn't matter really within degrees of what the value of the land is currently, because often you can pay above market price for the land. This is another title split example. Now this is houses, as you can see. It's not flats this time. So the previous example I showed you was flats. This was actually a farm where the farm buildings had been converted to holiday lets. And they've got the use changed from C1 back to C3. So C3 being standard residential, and then split the titles. And I think there was 9. It's nine units here. So they were all created, 9 separate freeholds this time, not leases, separate freeholds. So 9 freeholds were created, and that added an awful lot of value in this instance. So this is down in Somerset, so quite a cheap area, southwest of England. So purchase costs quite a lot. I mean, obviously you've bought quite a lot of property there, but that's an average of £100,000 per property, roughly speaking. Build costs and fees, so you spread that between the 9 properties. That's not a great deal that you've actually spent there. I mean, roughly 50,000 per property. Selling costs, you've got the total costs there. Total net profit of nearly £800,000. That's an amazing uplift. Bearing in mind, you look at the costs there. Now, this was done with a JV, but also, apart from those buildings you can actually see there, the farm buildings, to the left you can see a barn on this picture. That hasn't been converted yet. You've also got the land by the barn, where potentially you can get planning on. And to the far right of the existing plots, there's also land there where also you could potentially get planning on. So this actual plot was found on Rightmove. Everything I'm showing you, by the way, on tonight, nothing is off market. It's all been found on Rightmove. Okay, and with this particular one, the lady was elderly. She's in her 80s. She lived across the road from these farm buildings, and she is now a joint venture partner. So the money she got from the sale, she's now reinvested in the next project. So there's multiple ways you can actually make these things work. This is one of my recent ones. I bought this last year. This is in part of Essex. So when you look at that, again, you might want, if you can comment in the chat box. What is it? Do you think? Something might be obvious. What is the attraction of the site?
It's right beside the road by the looks of it on the bottom left.
Yeah, that's definitely the road down there. What else might be an attraction about it?
So the owner said the land.
Yeah.
It's obviously half of it's empty, if that's what they mean. Road frontage and land has been offered by Dominic.
Yep. One of the main things for this, for me, was the greyed out area at the back. They're all new builds. And more importantly, they were all sold. So when I looked at the site, I thought, well, okay, there's potential here to get some new build housing as well. The site next to me, they've already, I think they've built about 20 now. There's another 30 to build. That's a huge plot. That used to be a house. There was a house there. It's now a road going down, and there were going to be 50 houses. So it was a huge plot from a house. And this was mine is the next door neighbour. So my house is bigger than anything that's there, valued higher, and obviously, yes, the land that's highlighted, there's potential there to get planning. So I bought this in December last year. That's the design. I've actually got planning now for 3 houses. So two large 4-bedroom detached, this one on the left, this one on the right, and a 3-bedroom detached bungalow at the front, all within a fenced, walled environment. Because if you look back here, you probably can't see it so much because of all this greenery, but this right down the right-hand side, this is a wall. The back, there's an 8-foot high wall all the way around there, all around her here, all the way at the front. Now, unfortunately, because of all this vegetation over the years, as there's never been cut back, it's affected the wall at the front. So that wall's now got to come down. But what we're going to replace it with the design, is a 6-foot high black fence, because it goes in with the other parts. These are slate roofs. The garages will be timber framed, dark blackened out wood as well. So just to create that value. Now, I can't remember. I've got the values the next time. Oh yeah, so it cost me 420 with fees and everything else, around about 200,000. Planning uplifts about 350,000. So what does that mean? Essentially, the way I look at this, and this is one of my strategies that I do all the time, I look at this and think, okay, the house was very run down, so there's potential to make money on the house. What I look to do is, at worst, break even, because as far as I'm concerned, the money is in the land around it. So I look for houses with large plots, and if I can get planning, which I say 99% of the time I will, because I've worked with the right people, I've been doing this years, I know what I'm doing. 99% of the time I will get planning. This one wasn't straightforward, but we still got the planning through in the end. So that value, those plots then have a value. Now I could keep the house and just sell the plots, but I've decided I'm actually, at the moment, the whole thing is on the market. So the existing house is worth around about 650. It will sell for that kind of figure, so kind of break even. So I'm making, let's say 250, 300,000 pounds, 100,000 pounds per plot, just for getting the planning. And that would have been done within 12 months. This is another one. Again, you can see my strategy here. This house here, this is the house on there currently. It's a disgusting property. It's a total terrible layout. You can see the road out the front here. So this is at the end of this road, this house. So what I'm going to do is knock this house down, and we're going to build 5 more. Now, the way I work these, okay, is not straightforward. So going back to this one as well, whilst I'll put an offer in, I put a holding offer in. So my offer is designed to make them think, not necessarily accept, because I don't want to accept it too quickly. So what I do with each of these is, whilst I'm negotiating, if you want to call it that, with the vendor, I'm never quick to respond. Like agents always call you up, oh no, they've rejected your offer, would you want to put another offer in? I'll say, well, I'll think about it. Because a lot of these properties I'm looking at have been on the market already for 4, maybe 5 or 6 months. So I know they're not going anywhere, because they'll have issues. The first property I just showed you, that had issues because it was totally run down and a lot of damp. In fact, on the first day of building, my guys walked through the front door and fell through the floor because all the floorboards were rotted. And that wasn't a cost I'd allowed for the buys, by the way. So my refurb cost was quite high. This one is a disgusting property. That's why it's not selling. It's a probate one as well, which is another key indicator. Usually what I try to go for first is an option agreement, because that's much easier to do. But in what I'm doing whilst I'm negotiating and playing around, I will put a pre-app in with the local council to see whether there's potential to do what I want to do. So I'm de-risking all the time. Now, because a pre-app will usually come back within 6 to 8 weeks. For the quickest one I've had back is 4 weeks. By the time I've faffed around negotiating to and fro with the agent, I would have had my pre-app response back. Now, sometimes I might lose the property because the buyer will come in. But fine. That means I've lost £200 or £400 by putting the pre-app in. But the majority of instances, that doesn't happen. So I'll go back. I'll try and get an option, and you can get options through estate agents, by the way. A lot of people think you can't, but you can get options through estate agents. But if for some reason they won't accept it, and that's often the case with beneficiaries, like in this instance, a probate, because they want the money. So what I will do is a delayed completion. I won't do a conditional contract. I'll do a delayed completion. So what I'll do is exchange contracts. I'll immediately apply for planning based on the pre-app advice. So they've come back and said, yes, in this instance, we can get 5 properties on. Yes, we agree with you. What they came back with and said, well, actually, what we prefer is 2 houses and 3 bungalows. So, that's great advice, and that's enough for me to de-risk the situation, to go in and say, right, I'm going to offer you, in this instance, we offered full asking price with a delayed completion of 4 months, because I know, because the type of planning I apply for, I'll have an answer within 2 months. So, other opportunities, and I'm almost done. Apart from what I've just described, I think niching in certain areas. I think HMOs work, but what I've seen in the market is too many people are copycatting. They're doing exactly the same as the next HMO. And in my opinion, to succeed in HMOs, you need to be a little bit different. You need to focus on a particular target market. It might be contractors. It could be doctors. I know one particular HMO company that specialises in providing houses for surgeons. Right, and that's all they do. They don't go outside that, and consequently, they charge a premium rate. Apart hotels. Now, I'm not a great lover of service accommodation at all. I think that's a market that's becoming saturated. But apart hotels, a little bit different. So, where everything's automated. So taking away the bed and breakfast element of a B&B and creating an automated situation on a high end really, really works very well. Commercial property, I think it's an underutilized market. Now is a fantastic time to buy commercial property. It's valued differently to residential. If you don't understand it, it's valued more on the income and the personal company that's actually in there, rather than the bricks and mortar, which is residential property is totally the other way around. And then trading, so buying and selling properties, so finding opportunities. So like similar to what I'm doing, where I'm buying and generally I don't do the refurb, by the way. I will buy the property that still needs a refurb, get the planning on the side, and just sell it straight on. So I've traded it straight on. And what I try to do is what's called a back-to-back transaction, where I will buy it, agree a sale very quickly with somebody else. So I'm selling it before I've completed. And that way I don't pay stamp duty, by the way. And then the BRR model, buy, refurbish, rent, refinance, repeat model. I think great. If you're adding value, you're always going to make money in whatever market you're working in. So, apologies. That's me. If you, I'm not selling anything tonight, but if you do need any help, that's my email address. And I'm done, Martin, unless there's any questions.